All right, good evening. Welcome to tonight's Design Review Commission for Wednesday, November 17, 2021. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner and Temporary Chair Killian.
Here.
Commissioner Curling.
Here.
Commissioner Gorney.
Here.
We have a quorum. However, I should mention that the Chair Case and Vice Chair Valia are not here tonight. So we have appointed the previous chair of the Design Review Commissioner, Commissioner Killian, as the temporary chair for this meeting.
Okay, we're here in person, but also you might participate in the Zoom. So if that's the case, the Zoom meeting ID is 840-4618-3479, and the login password is 574399. And if you'd like to join us by phone, the number is 1-669-900-6833. So tonight we have 3 items, I believe, and if there's no objection, I would like to move the item 4A, which is the 1524 Townhomes, a 1-year extension, to the consent calendar. Do I have any objections to that?
Not for me.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to object to that or wants to make a comment on that project? So seeing none, we'll move that to the consent calendar. And there are, first we have item 2A, which is the adoption of the proposed 2022 commission calendar. And then the second item now is the 1524 Townhomes 1-year extension. Do I have a motion or any comments?
I was going to say, Chair, just really quickly, do we know if we have anyone on Zoom? Because I don't know if we asked anyone on Zoom about objecting to the consent.
No, we don't have any.
Okay, thanks.
Hands in the air.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second it.
Roll call?
Commissioner Gorney.
Yes.
Commissioner Curling.
Yes.
Temporary Chair Killian.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-0 for the consent calendar.
All right, moving on to public communication. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comments on items that are not on tonight's agenda. If anybody in the audience would like to make a comment, now is the time to do it on any item not on tonight's agenda. Seeing none, do we have any Zoom participants?
Seeing none?
Okay, with that, we're going to move to public hearings. And the first item on tonight's agenda is item 4B. The project is the Luxury Collection Dealership, a sign exception and rebranding. And I see we have, Jessica, if we could have a staff report, please.
Good evening, Design Review Commission. My name is Jessica Gonzalez, and I'm the project planner for the Luxury Collection Dealership, Design Review, and Sign Exception. So getting into the project, the site is located at the corner of Parkside Drive and North Main Street. Moving into the project scope, it is to reface the existing showrooms with new aluminum and wood paneling, resurface the inventory lot and install some new lighting. There are some landscape changes proposed and to replace all site signage. I'll just note that other building elements are proposed to remain. So the dealership consists of 3 adjacent parcels totaling approximately 1 acre in size. And the site is developed with 2 showrooms. One of them is at the corner of Parkside Drive and North Main, which is the Aston Martin showroom, and the other is towards the rear along Parkside, which is the Bentley Mclaren. The rendering does depict the facade remodel with the new landscaping, new paneling, and new signage as well. And I did include the colors and materials board on the screen to give you an idea of the color palette proposed. And so the project also includes refreshing and replanting the existing landscape areas as shown in the rendering and on the landscape plan. And so moving into signage, here are the existing signs for the Aston Martin showroom. The 6 existing Maserati, Walnut Creek, and Alfa Romeo signs are proposed to be removed and replaced with 2 Aston Martin signs. And so these are the 2 Aston Martin sign replacements. They are brushed brass with clear acrylic and white LED lighting. The sign locations are shown on the screen, and they will both be facing North Main Street. And so moving into the other showroom, the Bentley Mclaren, here are the existing signs on the building. The 4 existing Bentley signs are to be replaced with 1 Bentley sign and 2 McLaren signs. And those are shown here. They will be acrylic with LED backlit lighting, and the sign locations are shown on the sign plan. As you'll note, the placement of the Bentley sign will exceed the 25-foot height maximum. As such, additional findings will be required. Based on the good design and the height following the curved tall architecture, staff does support the additional 4 feet in height for a 29-foot height placement. So moving into freestanding signage, the site has an existing freestanding Bentley sign, which is proposed to be removed. And the new multi-brand sign is proposed in a new location towards the corner of the site. The 74 square foot freestanding sign does display all 5 makes sold on site and does comply with the 75 square foot maximum size for dealerships. And so given the limited visibility of the second showroom, the amount of car brands sold on site, and complementary design, staff does support the request for the freestanding sign. And so moving into the requested exception, the total square footage of all proposed signs is approximately 227 square feet. The sign ordinance allows a maximum of 200 square feet. As such, the exception is requested. And staff does support the request given the signs comply with all other sections of the ordinance, and these signs will assist customers with business identification. And so just some background, on September 9th, the DRC sign subcommittee did review the project, and the committee was supportive of the additional sign height and the project as outlined in the staff report, but did recommend that the applicant consider reducing the overall combined square footage of signage, removing some of the inward-facing signs, and reducing the size of some of the signs. And so in response, the applicant did revise the package and responded to all 3 comments by reducing the square footage from 281 square feet to 227 square feet. And so with that, staff does recommend the DRC grant final approval for the design review and sign ordinance exception. Available for any questions, and the applicant team is here as well.
All right, any questions from staff?
Yeah, hi. Just a clarification. So I know because of the size of the floor area and the double frontage, they would normally get up to 300 square feet, but is it back down to 200 because it's one owner? Is that,
Yeah,
okay,
it's the one business.
great, thank you.
Couple questions. The signs that are on the building now were not approved, correct?
We were not able to find any of the permitting for those signs, so
Okay.
it's unclear.
Okay. I'm just, when it comes to the freestanding sign is with the exceptions. The second one is that the building is set back from the street. So it needs to have a freestanding sign because you can't see it. And I see both the buildings right on the street. So am I missing the interpretation of what it means to be set back from the street?
I think for the freestanding sign specifically with those findings, we were looking at, there's some existing trees that are kind of blocking the building at the front, and then the first showroom limits the ability to see the second showroom towards the rear. So we were,
So it's really the fact you can't see the second showroom around the corner.
yeah.
Okay, got it. And then on the cumulative size exception, the third item says that it can be granted that the sign is necessary to further a public use or public benefit. I'm assuming this is coming under the public use part of that, in that the public goes to the building and needs to find out where they're going?
Yeah,
I don't
and
see it
then
as a public benefit necessarily.
we were looking at it as a way to help people navigate to the business, given the amount of car brands sold on site, and so that one freestanding sign more acting as an understanding for everyone to understand what cars are sold there.
Okay. And the existing freestanding sign is only about 7 feet tall or something, 10?
It's pretty small, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the new one being 13'7" tall, there's no guide to how big that can be, correct? It just has to be within the square footage on the building.
I believe there is one standard, it's 25 feet in height maximum, but for the dealerships, it is the 75 square feet maximum.
75 square, okay, so that is the max, okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Yeah.
Jessica, it's, the landscape plan was in our package, and I know we're not discussing it, but that's been approved and that will be installed? Or is that in the process of being installed? Or,
I don't believe that's being installed. That's a part of the design review package.
okay, now, I'm a little bit confused. I think we're here for the signs, right? Approving the sign package?
For
I
the,
didn't really look at the landscape plan. It was my assumption that it was just in for our information as it related to the sign, and it had already been approved, because I don't remember seeing it. But is this the first time we're looking at it, and we're supposed to approve the landscape tonight?
yes.
Okay, that's, I didn't understand that, okay. I don't know, did you guys?
I have no questions on landscape.
On that, so, okay, I didn't really either, but if we approve it tonight, then that will be installed, what was in the package. Okay, all right, thank you.
Same thing on the minor architectural changes, the
Yeah.
wood added and things like that, that's also part of
Yeah.
this, okay.
And I do have a color or materials palette too, if you guys are interested in that.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, I want to know what that green thing is.
That's the grass.
We haven't been able to see these in person in a while.
I had no idea we were looking at it beyond the summer.
Yeah, usually it's just signed by itself. Yes. Yeah, I'm very familiar. Brian wrangled me into it.
Look at that one.
Oh, okay.
Would you disinfect that, please?
My dog's hideous that.
That was your mustache or something. All right, we're looking at samples while we're doing that. Thank you, Jessica. And if the applicant's here and like to make a presentation?
Good evening. I'm Christian Oakes with TWM Architects. Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Jessica, for that presentation. And thank you, commissioners, for coming tonight and supporting the city of Walnut Creek. The luxury collection has evolved from being Maserati and Alfa Romeo to being quite a few different brands. Of course, Bentley's been in there, but it's growing, and we now need showrooms for quite a few brands. Each brand carries a very unique identity, history, and character, and so it's very difficult to accommodate this in this space. But we also need to represent each on the exterior of the buildings with signage and materials and ways to make it clear to customers how to get to each showroom. And we've gone back and forth with each brand to figure out what their needs are and try to integrate them all. So it's, even though it's one ownership, it's sort of like 5 different showrooms. This also is a very difficult site. The two of the showrooms are on a side street off of North Main, which is considered the main street, and they dip down in topography. So one showroom is really low, the McLaren showroom, and very difficult to see from North Main Street. The Bentley showroom is also set way back, and the parking is quite a ways from North Main Street. The site has been assembled from 3 separate sites that were run separately. It's in a pretty big state of deterioration. We really want to step this site up and make it a luxury site. At the same time, we are preserving the basic buildings that are on site. We're not putting any additions on. We're refinishing the surfaces, replanting the landscape, enhancing the landscape, taking environmental considerations into concern. The lighting is outdated, so without really adding any fixtures, we've just repositioned the fixtures and added new fixtures to really improve the quality of lighting without bringing the light level up to an uncomfortable level at the same time. And one of the issues we've had to deal with also is the entry is on the side street, and that's where we really want to steer the customers. This is a very busy intersection, and the first time you come to this site, it's very, keeping safety in mind, it's kind of hard to find the entry. So we really need this monument sign to help steer customers down into that lower entry. All these signs are very sophisticated, high-level design, integrated with the colors of the building, and the materials are all high quality. It's all designed in harmony with each other, and this is an aesthetic's been reviewed by many levels. And we appreciate your support on this project. Also with me here tonight is Sohail Tabar, the general manager, if you have any questions. We have the project manager for the ownership, Derek Froman. Our civil engineer is here. We are resurfacing the inventory lot if you have any questions on that. And our landscape architect, Don McNair, is on Zoom. One final comment, concern was brought up about the existing signs permitted. The ownership of the luxury collection did not initially put those signs up. That was prior to this ownership's period. So we've worked carefully with the design committee, gone back to the manufacturers, and we hope that you will accept our solution for the signage. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Sohail Tabar, General Manager of the Luxury Collection. I just wanted to spend a brief moment to thank the committee and also to thank Jessica Gonzalez for representing our application so well. And I'm here for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's bring it back to the commission. Do we have any questions?
I have a couple. What would happen if you added another line of cars to the building with the freestanding sign? Would you change the arrangement of them, or what would you do? Or if you lost one? I mean, is the sign adjustable like that, or would you just take them off and have space? Or I'm just curious. It's normally when we look at signs like this, we look at them a certain way. So I'm just wondering what you would do if there's a change, if you know.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd have to go back to planning, but the logos themselves could be switched out. It is the same material, each box on the sign, and it matches. It's been selected to match the building that it's adjacent to.
Yeah, why not a freestanding sign that says Walnut Creek Luxury Cars instead of having repetitive, signage on there? I'm just curious. The name of the place is important, isn't it? Or maybe that's just a blanket overview.
The dealerships are They all have recognition separately. So as a Bentley Walnut Creek, a McLaren Walnut Creek, an Aston Martin Walnut Creek, Maserati Walnut Creek. So to bring clarity to that, the luxury collection doesn't tell the story. And so if someone is coming to look for Bentley Walnut Creek, they may misunderstand what the luxury collection actually means.
I have to ask that because we see other signs sometimes where they're trying to put every business on the sign, and they wind up getting a lot of repetitive or like overdone signage. So I just wanted to make sure there was a reason why that's done.
Absolutely, yeah. And they actually have independent URLs online as well.
Okay.
So we have a Bentley Walnut Creek, a Maserati Walnut Creek. Yeah.
And also, do you think the sign is critical to people finding the showroom? I mean, don't most people plug it into talk to their GPSs? And I mean, I don't expect they'll be driving by and go, oh, I can get a Maserati today. I mean, it just seems, is it necessary to have that sign?
Absolutely. We get daily occurrences of customers, and I can't tell you how Google operates today with their map system, but I can tell you that every morning I'm redirecting at least 3 or 4 customers.
Okay, thank you.
Personally. Yeah.
Thanks.
I want to stay on the monument sign. The basis of wanting the monument sign, as I understand it, is really for direction for that second building. Is that correct? The showroom? You're indicating that you can't see it from Main Street and it's set back?
Yeah, I mean, more so not only for brand identification, but also the main entrance is off of Parkside. And I think that if you're looking at the building, that wouldn't be a natural to you.
Right.
And
So why not push the monument sign down to that building? Because you have visibility on Main Street, so that sign isn't helping you there. So why not replace the existing monument sign with this new one in that same location?
Well, yeah, so we want to be able to demonstrate not just Bentley that's visible on the second floor, but McLaren on the first floor, as well as the building that you'd be passing to enter that entrance. So that monument sign is actually in a central location.
Well, it's not really. And I guess I'm still not following, the findings and everything for a monument sign and what, from the city's point of view, it's supposed to be doing. And again, if it's supposed to be directional into the building, and from what you're showing, or your rationale for having it, it's the second building, and you're indicating that second building is set back from the streets, and that's your rationale that we should find a finding for that monument sign. But again, that monument sign isn't even related to that second building. You're putting it up on the corner right next to a building that's probably less than 10 feet away from the street. I mean, you can't get much more visible from a street presence on that building where the monument sign is. So I question whether you need it there.
So the question is that if you're on Main Street, if you're unable to see the second building, then you're equally unable to see the monument sign? I'm just getting clarification.
But no, I'm saying the monument sign for how you're proposing it really relates to that second building. So I question why you don't have the monument sign down there, so when people have made the turn, then they're looking where to get into that main entry, which is what you're indicating
Correct.
is not visible. So why not have the monument sign down there that would say turn right and enter in here?
Yeah, because the flow of traffic, you're actually directionally explaining that before you're making the turn.
Okay, I didn't follow that answer, but
Well, you're turning right into the main entrance, right, which is just beyond the monument sign.
well, you go quite a bit, considerable distance. Let me jump to a little bit the location. I'm a little bit confused. You have on your sheet A4.1, you're showing the location of the proposed monument. And it's different from all the other site plans, so I'm kind of curious that if this is allowed, where exactly it's going to be and how it's going to interact with the existing walls.
I've heard this comment before that there's some conflict. It's pretty clear where it's located. It's in line with the wall of one end of the radiused window. And it's dimensioned on a plan. I believe it's 4.1, but I don't have that in front of me.
Right, and what I'm looking at is that sign you're going to have to tear down one of the walls and set it into the wall, is what it is showing. But
It's just in front of a low planter wall.
well, that's what it shows on your landscape plan, but that's not what it shows on A4.1, and that's why I'm confused.
It says here it's a low curve.
The wall that you see cutting through the pylon is just a mow strip. It's not a retaining wall. A mow curb.
Okay. All right, well, I guess maybe then the landscape plan has to be, whichever one is correct. Actually, I guess I hadn't planned on doing that, but if the landscape architect is available on Zoom, just to
I'll bring in Don McNair.
Just one comment while you're getting him online about the previous pylon location closer to Bentley was an unsuccessful location. It was too far down the hill to see.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Great, thanks I didn't think I was going to be talking to you, but here we are.
We have the wonders of technology.
Right. I had kind of assumed the landscape plan had already been approved and it was just going to be installed, but I've been looking over. I just had a couple quick questions.
Yes.
Along North Main Street, south of the corner building, it appears that there's a biofilter planter. And from your drawings, you indicated there's biofilter sod, typical. Can you kind of explain?
Yes. Biofiltration Sod is a product that is produced by Delta Bluegrass over in the valley. And basically, it's a blend of 3 or 4 California native grasses, which can, they're tough plants. They're low water use grasses. They don't get particularly tall, 18 inches or so. They, if you water them, they will stay green in the summertime. If you don't, they will die out and come back in the wintertime. But most importantly is they can stand inundation. So when it does rain and these grasses are, underwater for any period of time, it won't harm them. They'll tolerate that kind of inundation.
So it's an unmown situation then. It's not a sod grass, is what your intention is?
Correct.
Okay. Then my last question is regarding your irrigation. From my quick review and the small print, are you doing a drip system, or are you doing
No.
a subsurface?
Subsurface.
Okay. The way I'm looking at your landscape plan, you have really just rows of plants in those raised terrace planters around the corridor and back and forth. And in the spirit of water conservation, wouldn't it be more appropriate to do the point drip rather than flooding the entire planters?
Well, I would say no, because the way this is we're watering the entire landscape. And where all these plants are, the roots are going to want to expand out and infiltrate that area. So, essentially what we're doing is we're treating it as if it's rainfall, though without the rainfall. So it's actually, in terms of water use, we're well under water use, and that's a function of the plant's water needs. So, most everything on here is low water use with the exception of a couple of zones. And generally speaking, it's a very, very efficient water system because it doesn't evaporate, and we're putting water where the roots are, not depending on drips point system to irrigate a plant that's going to outgrow the point system.
And on your plant legend, you show a Japanese maple.
Correct.
Are you installing one, or it says size not applicable, so I was a little bit confused on whether there's an existing one you were just showing, or?
So what it is in front of that planter currently, there's an existing Japanese maple. The goal here is to not take it out completely, but to relocate it to that planter adjacent to it, where it would have more room and be more central to that turning radius. So we're basically reusing an existing tree. And I totally get why you're asking these questions, because if you haven't really had a chance to look at the plans, it would be very unclear. But I do call it out as an existing tree, which is a transplant.
Okay. And so if the transplant doesn't work or whatever, you'd be putting it in a new Japanese maple?
Yeah, I would presume so.
Okay, and that, of course, could be a 24-inch box tree?
Oh, yeah, or even 36,
36? Okay, great. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have any other questions before I open it up to the public?
I have one brief one for the applicant. The freestanding sign is proposed to have text on both sides, right? Yes? Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to open it up to the public. If anybody in the audience would like to make a comment, you could come on up, or Zoom if you have any comments or questions.
There is nobody in Zoom.
Okay. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for our comments.
Personally, I'd like to hear the two members of the sign subcommittee comment first, just because you guys have seen this thing before. So I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Do you want me to go first, Chair?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was involved with this in a lot of detail when we had the sign subcommittee meeting, so that's why I really didn't have a lot of questions. I understand, I'm very familiar with that intersection, and I think I understand why you want that monument sign where you want it. And it makes sense to me why you want it there, because the main thoroughfare generally is Main Street there. There is a lot of traffic on Parkside, but Parkside it's split there. There's the overpass, and you really can't see that back building until you make the curve. So by the time someone makes the curve, it would have been nice if they could have known that they're going where they wanted to go, so that they know those brands are there. So I'm okay with that. I was probably a proponent of trying to get the sign just a little bit smaller, only because it seems really tall, but you guys the applicant did a good job reducing the overall sign square footage, and given the fact that theoretically the floor area ratio and everything else would have justified 300 square feet if you were of separate ownership. I think having it down to 227 is actually a pretty good feat. And, the other things are really minor things, like the height of the one sign. There's no other place to put it. It wouldn't look right anywhere else. So I am comfortable with this sign package as it's presented now.
All right, let me just, before we go to comments, as I remember, the sign subcommittee, we thought it was oversigned when they first came in. And we were trying to get creative on how they could bring it more in line with something that was acceptable to us. We explored reducing the freestanding sign, removing the name and just having the logo or vice versa. And we didn't really have a problem with the 25-foot height issue. I think we all felt that was, you know, it fit the building and everything. As I understand, my reluctance when they came in, I thought it was oversigned, and I did not support the monument sign, but we tried to give them options, leaving it open that, you know, it was kind of one or the other, I think. You know, they got rid of the, in my opinion, if they got rid of the monument sign, you know, I think I could okay a little bit on the over the signage. Or they reduced the wall signage below the acceptable, then I would look at some sort of a modification of a smaller monument sign. That's how I remember the first meeting going. So anyway, that's the background. So now we can bring it back to comments for today.
Are you okay with it now as submitted?
No, I'm not. I'm not in favor of the monument sign. I am okay with the signs on the buildings. I'm okay with the 25-foot sign. First of all, I think where it's located, it just is disjointed. It's just an appendage out there. But more importantly, the reason for this monument sign is for that second building. And it doesn't relate to the second building at all. And I think there's 2 or 3 opportunities to move that down in front of that building. And I think it should be much smaller. I think all this is just a very large advertising in front of a building that you can't get much more visible on Main Street. And the argument that because the second building is not on Main Street, I don't think is a valid argument. I mean, how many other stores are not on Main Street that happen to be on a side street? And they're a block off of Main Street. Does that give them the right to put a monument sign on Main Street to direct them to their building? I don't think that's how we operate with the monument signs for that reason. So right now, I'm not in favor of the monument sign, but I'm okay with the other signs.
Okay. I have quick clarification. Quick clarification from Jessica. The 74 square feet on the proposed monument sign, since it's two-sided, does that wind up being 150 square feet, or is it only figured once?
It only counts on one side.
Okay, but in reality, it's double that, okay. Thank you. Yeah, initially, I'm okay with the 200 square foot, I mean, being over the 200 square feet, because it is 3 sites, and really, if you took each building separately, each one could probably have 200, so 300 is allowed, you know, in the overall. So I'm okay with the amount of signage. I think that they work with the sign subcommittee pretty well on that. I'm okay with the 25-foot height on the other sign. No issue with that, because the architecture dictates it, but it's also why we always need to address signage conceptually in new buildings, because we wind up having signs like that over the building. Obviously, this is an older building, we're not looking at that, but, you know, in general, we need to take a look at that. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of a 14-foot, really, it's 14'7" to the top of that sign if you include the base and then there's some slope to it, so it's more like 15 feet. And so I have less concern about its location than I do about its size. And I think it's advertising for the most part and less required for people to be able to find the building in the back. So I would be a fan of a smaller sign in the location that's there now. But again, we never like repetitive signage, and it's got a lot of brands on it. So I think that sign could be smaller, and it, you know, could still have the brands on it. I understand that, but I think it's too big. So I'm ready to approve the 200 square feet and the 25-foot, but I think the monument sign needs to go back to sign subcommittee.
So, it sounds like you're okay with the location, just not the sign. And what I'm hearing from Brian is he's not okay with the sign or the location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The one comment I'd like to add based upon one of your comments, Brian, I would agree that, so like there used to be a BMW motorcycle dealership a little bit further down on Parkside, and I would agree, no, we would never let them put their sign up on the corner of Main. I think this is a unique site the way I view it because it technically is all one umbrella business, but it happens to be multi-brand. And that's why I was comfortable with the location of the sign and just knowing the traffic flow in that intersection because I've gone through it a bazillion times. I too think if it was a little bit smaller, I'd be a little happier with it because it is tall. That's a very tall sign. So maybe there's a compromise somewhere if we can get it sized down a little bit, but I don't know. We got 3 very unique opinions tonight on that sign.
Well, we can, a couple of ways we can do this, I guess. We can, it sounds like we're in agreement with the wall signage, from what I'm hearing. So we could split this in 2, give them that approval, and it'd be their choice if they want to come back a second or third try with the monument sign, or we could deny the whole thing and have them come back with a whole package. Again, maybe there's give and take between the wall signs and the monument sign. Am I going in the right direction? Is this something we can't do, or?
No, you can do that, but I would encourage somebody to, if you're going to make a motion, to make a motion of how you feel.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I would make a motion that we,
It
approve
doesn't,
the 2 parts.
you can have more than one motion and motions can be denied.
Okay.
I'm going to make a motion that obviously it's a quality project, so I'm going to make a motion that we approve the building signage being over 200 square feet, and that the one sign can be over 25 foot high on the front building, but that the freestanding sign is returned to sign subcommittee and made smaller, lower and smaller, and is redesigned to be, I don't know, 3 feet or so less, but they have to make sure that the text works, but I'm thinking something about 3 feet.
You can just say smaller.
Smaller, thank you. I want to give them some direction, it doesn't become 6 inches, but that would be my opinion. But I'm okay with it in the location that it's in.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I would second that motion.
Okay, before we vote, I want to have a little conversation on that, because the motion kind of implies that if they come back, we are accepting a monument sign, and I'm not in favor of that. Is there any consideration for just approving the signs and then having the applicant hearing our discussion, they come back with whatever they want, but we haven't had an implication in our motion that if they come back with a monument sign that's perhaps 2 feet lower, that we're going to approve it?
I think
that
whatever
may-
sign that's going to be is going to have to go through the process. So I don't think there's an implied approval. I think just giving them if we said absolutely not, we're not going to allow it, that would tell them we're not going to allow it. But I think, for my opinion, to have it in that location but smaller would be acceptable. But again, they have to design it such that it meets sign subcommittee and design review.
Does
Okay.
the motion
think-
stand?
Well,
Yes.
I think the complication we throw in if we just approve everything but the monument sign is it potentially freezes everything else. I'm guessing, unless they reapplied for everything else, because if it worked out that the commission did not approve a monument sign, I'm guessing they might want to redesign everything else to kind of figure out how to make up for the lack of the monument sign. So,
I guess they would have that option. We can approve it, but they can come back with another, if they don't want the monument sign and want that square footage elsewhere, they can make a whole new package, right?
It would be a resubmittal.
A resubmittal.
but your motion, you allowed, in your motion, it allows for a monument sign in current location, but the chair does not want a monument sign at all.
Correct.
So do you want your motion to stand with a monument sign that has to come back again in that location?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
The motion and the second stand?
And before we go there, also, let's put in, we kind of got away, what are the findings for the 25-foot and the over the signage? I heard because this was multiple properties consolidated, that they would have been allowed more signage.
Yes.
So is that a finding? And the findings for that one above 25 feet? where the
Architecturally.
Architectural, that's where the sign
should be.
should be because of design and so forth, so.
Yes, I agree. I think
Right,
staff
those-
report goes into that the building warrants the 25-foot on the corner. And I think that the exception to the total amount being that in certain conditions, they could have 300 square feet, so this is acceptable.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and if we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Gorney,
Yes.
Commissioner Krilling,
Yes.
Commissioner Killian.
No.
2-1, the motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Pass that down.
Okay, now we're going to move on to item 4C. It's the Mount Diablo Mixed Use Project, application number Y18-063. And are you up again, Jessica, or? Okay.
We have Haley on this one, I think. I tried to call Haley to get her to give us the renderings, but we don't,
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Haley Crawford, Senior Planner here with the City of Walnut Creek. Tonight, I will be presenting final design review request for 1532 Mount Diablo Boulevard. It's a proposed mixed-use project consisting of 4 stories, 30 residential units, and approximately 10,000 square feet of ground floor commercial area, activated rooftop and landscaping along the street, and the rooftop area as well. I'll get into some project details, but I do just want to start with some context. The project site is located in the Locust Street Mount Diablo specific plan. It is part of what is known as Opportunity Site number 2, shown here on that star on the map. The entire Opportunity Site 2 consists of 1532 Mount Diablo, the subject site, and then the property directly west, 1556 Mount Diablo Boulevard. The applicant has taken a phased approach to this project, and tonight we're looking at phase 1, shown here in blue, which is on 1532 Mount Diablo. They have designed the project in a way to accommodate a potential phase 2 to meet the goals of the specific plan area, and I'll get into those a little bit. But I just want to highlight, to kind of clarify that tonight, the adjacent property is under separate ownership. And so the proposal tonight is for final design review just for phase 1, that blue site. Some of the ways that the applicant has addressed the needs of the specific plan. This is an image taken showing a kind of conceptual idea in the specific plan for that site too. It calls for a 20-foot wide paseo off Mount Diablo at the center of the site, and then a 1,000 square foot plaza area. The applicant has designed their project to include half of that. So they have a 10-foot wide paseo and a 500 square foot plaza. Again, designing it in a way that if phase 2 were to develop, which would require another design review process, but they have allowed for the entire specific plan vision to occur. So now I'll get into just some specific details tonight. Here is a site plan. The site fronts Mount Diablo Boulevard, but also has frontage along Commercial Lane to the east. And here just now flipping the north is now to the left of your screen. But just to kind of show how access is provided, the red arrows kind of mimic vehicular access coming off Commercial Lane and then entering 2 levels of underground parking through the garage at the north end of the site. And that also provides access to continue along Commercial Lane, but also out to Locust Street. And then these green dots here show the kind of primary pedestrian entrance on the ground floor. And here again is a little more context in a site plan. You can see here that kind of ground floor paseo along the bottom of your screen and a little bit more detail, which serves as the residential entrance for the project. So I want to kind of back up and revisit some of the project history since the DRC's seen this last. So back in September of 2020, the Planning Commission adopted an addendum to the previously approved EIR for the specific plan to accommodate this project. They also approved a tentative map for the condominium units. They approved a conditional use permit to allow the residential density and the residential parking requirements. They also approved a minor use permit to allow for a parking reduction through a on-site valet parking program. And finally, they approved an exception to the specific plan's average setback requirement along Mount Diablo Boulevard. And then the DRC last saw this project back in January. That should say 2019, not 2021. On the slide, I apologize. But yes, back in January of 2019 for a study session, and they were supportive, or you were supportive of the project generally, but asked for a few kind of clarification points. Directed the applicant to look at the east and west building elevations in a little more detail, to utilize the proposed wood siding that's on the facade onto some of the ground level benches. So there was coordination there. To explore ways to activate Commercial Lane and to draw pedestrians into the new proposed paseo. And staff had also requested, in compliance with our downtown enhancement plan, that the pavers at the sidewalk and the paseo be our standard downtown interlocking pavers that you see around downtown now and that are on the adjacent property, the rooftop restaurant building at the corner of Mount Diablo and Main. So I'll focus my presentation tonight mainly on some of the items that DRC brought up. I have, access to all the plans if we do need to revisit things that were not discussed. But I'll start with some of the elevations. Here is a west elevation image. This would be facing Locust Street, or the adjacent property in Locust Street. The elevations that they are providing, they have shown one without the kind of wood bifolding, panel system that runs across the facade, and one with it. So you can get a sense of what is happening behind that wood screen element. And you can see the windows in a little more detail. So that's what the difference in these two elevations are. I do want to highlight that they've provided some more details, though, specifically of the ground floor storefront systems. Part of this was DRC's request of how those east and west elevations were detailed. So they have provided that tonight. For all these elevations, I do have color and material board that we can pass around just so you can see the materials, but there is a kind of porcelain tile base element that runs along the entire, both of those are the same. So I can actually, Chip, I'll hold on to one.
You want one?
Yeah, because we can project it for those on Zoom in a minute. So those are details provided for the west elevation, again, along that pedestrian paseo. And here is the east elevation. Again, I have kind of the large scale elevation, and then I have some details I'll show you as well. But this east elevation is the one facing Commercial Lane. And some additional details are provided by the applicant again in the plan set in response to DRC's comments. I will also mention briefly here, at the study session, there was some discussion that the applicant was exploring public art that would potentially have occurred along this elevation. At this point, the applicant is looking at paying the in lieu fee instead of providing art on site. So that is another change from what was presented, although I will say at the time, it was a conceptual plan and we didn't have details yet on what that would have looked like. And I've included the north and south building elevations. As I mentioned, Design Review Commission was supportive of the project as a whole and did not have too many comments on these elevations, but I wanted to show them in this presentation tonight. And there have not been many changes to these, if at all. You do see the garage entrance, though, on that north elevation, which is, I think, helpful. And the details of the south elevation storefront, which is the kind of primary frontage along Mount Diablo Boulevard. And I'll move on to the landscape plan. As I mentioned, there's landscaping along the ground, the street level, with some street trees along Mount Diablo Boulevard and a planter between the street and the sidewalk. There's also planting along the pedestrian paseo as well as commercial lane. I've highlighted in this detail that was provided in your packet tonight, the proposed pavers that were proposed by the applicant. In discussions with the applicant and in response to some of the comments from the study session, staff is still recommending that the pavers along Mount Diablo Boulevard, in compliance with the downtown enhancement plan, be the city standard pavers. In addition to that, while it's not required under the downtown enhancement plan, we're also recommending that the paseo and commercial lane have the same pavers, so it has a continuity of design for all of the pedestrian circulation points. I believe the applicant's also going to address this in their presentation as well, but I want to highlight that that has been added as a draft condition of approval, and if approved, it would differ from the details shown in your packet. I'll also just highlight that the benches, they are showing the wood benches, which was another comment the DRC made, so that they'll be matching the wood material on the building. And I'll just show the landscaping up at the rooftop. Again, it's an activated rooftop. That rooftop area will provide access to the public as well as residents, and obviously the retail users of the building. And there's also a restaurant up at the rooftop as well. And I'll end with some images here. I will note, though, that these renderings were previously shown at the study session. I know the applicant has some additional renderings that they have included in their presentation. So I won't spend too much time on these, but just wanted to give a little bit of feel of what this project would look like in a 3-dimension. And here's a commercial lane image. So I'll end just by saying that staff is supportive of the project and is recommending that the Design Review Commission grant final design review approval of Phase 1, which again is 1532 Mount Diablo Boulevard. Staff has added 3 conditions of approval in addition to our standard conditions of approval included in the draft resolution tonight. One being the interlocking pavers installed at Mount Diablo and the paseo for consistency with the downtown enhancement plan. Another one, that the stamped asphalt at commercial lane, so on the actual street, be cobblestone to mimic what's there in place right now. That detail was not clear on the plans, so we just wanted to make sure a condition was added. And finally, the specific plan allows and requests that loading occur on commercial lane, but we do want to make sure just that the loading, when it does occur on commercial lane, does not block the travel lanes. So we've just added that just for clarity as a condition. So with that, I'm here if you have any questions. The applicant's team is here tonight as well, and they will have a presentation for you.
All right, thank you, Haley. Questions?
Yeah. All right, thank you, Haley. Are you okay with thinking about the possibility that the second building may never be developed, or that piece of land might be sold and something else goes in? Are we okay with the half a paseo width at which could possibly be a permanent.
Yeah, staff worked with the applicant a lot on this, and I do know that they tried to kind of complete the vision of the specific plan with both properties, but at the end of the day, we do just have two separate ownerships here. So, staff is comfortable with the way that they've designed the project now, and obviously hopes that it will eventually be complete. But if not, I think it's still, a good project and provides, in and of itself, adequate circulation space, and it really addresses the pedestrian realm nicely, even if it were not to be developed fully.
Got it. Well, maybe we can, on the other one, if that ever comes up, if it's somebody else doing it, maybe hopefully there could be a required condition to have that 10-foot buffer regardless.
Well, yeah, I mean, any future development that were to, occur on the adjacent property would be subject to the same specific plan, to the same requirements as this project would. So that requirement to complete the Paseo and that plaza area would still be there, and they would have to adhere to that.
On the parking, you had a slide that showed traffic flow. Am I correct in that it is sort of a one-way flow coming into the parking, and you have to exit the other direction out towards Locust? Is that? It was very early on.
Yeah, I think
There.
So well, I mean, it's two-way in and out of the garage. Are you asking if it's one-way exit out to Locust Street?
Yeah, or can I, if I was a resident, could I turn right and go back out Commercial Lane? Is there room for that, or is this going to be a one-way?
If you were exiting the garage, you could continue down Commercial Lane. What I'm not sure of is if someone is on Locust Street, could they turn left, or if that's the one-way. So that's something that I would, I can quickly confirm and get back to you on that.
Yeah, did they do any traffic studies or anything about, because you're going to have a lot of, residential activity and obviously, and that's already packed down there.
Yeah. They did not do, kind of additional traffic studies above and beyond. Our traffic engineering department looked at the plans and looked at all the circulation patterns and felt it was adequate. It would mainly be looking at if someone could access the garage from Locust or if they would only access from Commercial Lane. That's something that I can clarify shortly for you.
Great.
It's also the current access point to the public garage right there as well.
Okay.
Yep. And I believe that's two-way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. And then where are the valeted cars going to go? Do we know?
I think I had a... I know they will be in one of the two levels of the garage, and I can have the applicant address it. I unfortunately don't think I put the underground plan, but that is where all the parking occurs.
Okay.
There's partially, just standard stalls that anyone can park at, and then some of the stalls are for the valet program only.
Okay, so all on site, nothing.
Oh, yes,
off-
yeah, all
okay.
on site. The valet program just allows them to park more cars in a confined space than what normally would be allowed if individuals were allowed to park their
Okay.
cars.
And then I'm getting close to the end here. On one of the slides, you mentioned a January 21 DRC study session, but I know I wasn't in that study session.
No, and that's what I did. Yeah, I wanted to clarify that. It was 2019, believe it or not. So a little bit ago.
Great. And then final question, and this is based on something I'm seeing happening at the Whole Foods up on Ignacio. They had a bar restaurant area. The pandemic came and they decided that, oh, great staging space for online shopping. Oh, we think we're just going to keep it that way. In this project, is the requirement for the public space on the roof, which I love, and the requirement to have, you can't force someone to run a restaurant there, but it's going to be a restaurant or something, is that basically in perpetuity? They can't change their mind later and go, oh, this is private roof space.
The notion that the rooftop is accessible to the public, that would have to maintain. The idea, though, that the space on the roof be utilized as a restaurant, I mean, I do know they're designing it that way, and that's the intent, but if, the site is still subject to the pedestrian retail zoning, and so if a restaurant were to, if another tenant, maybe a retail tenant, were to want that space, it would still be consistent with the pedestrian retail zoning. So that piece could change, but the access to the rooftop for the public and for any, resident or shopper of that area, that would have to maintain.
Okay, so that approximate 5,000 or the space allocated to the restaurant will have to be some business or some space for the public.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Haley, were you the original planner on this one 2 years
I
ago?
was not.
Okay.
I actually recently took this over from Greg Kapovich.
I thought so. So planning commission, we had a lot of discussions about this parking and the valet and the access and the difficulty getting in there, et cetera, at the original design review meeting. But, and about certain things about the size of the building. But planning commission has basically approved all that, and that's basically out of our purview now, correct? It's a done deal.
Yep,
right?
correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure you realize we had a lot of questions on that earlier. I heard something about a garage door on the ramp. Is it at the top of the ramp, or is it the bottom of the ramp, or is there no garage door at all? We can ask the applicant if you don't know, because you couldn't really tell on the drawings where it was supposed to
Yeah, I think where I mentioned that in my presentation was on the north elevation. You can see it.
be. So it's right on the outside of the building.
Well, I can go to a
Five-
plan. Let's see.
There it is, right there on the left. Up,
Yeah.
back. The back one, I think.
Back one?
Yeah, so that garage door shown there is at the edge, the front of the garage.
But that's meant for only like emergency? I mean, it's not gonna be closed all day where you gotta hit a button to open it up, are you? I mean, if you're valeting, you're gonna have cars backed up, so I'm assuming that's gonna be open all the time?
I'm assuming, so we can have the applicant
Okay.
kind of address security in and out of that garage. I don't know if there'll be like a key fob situation as well, maybe.
Okay. And, in our study session way back when, we talked about further accentuating the east and west building elevations. That is the same as we had before, correct?
They are, I think the applicant has provided just some additional detail of how they are accentuating those elevations.
Okay, thank you on that. And then, I remember some things from the study session that are a little different. I remember we talked about the Paseo. I guess half of Paseo was a passe, just in case you're wondering. We did talk about the fact that it's going to be the biggest building in town in that area. I seem to remember in the meeting, we asked for sections through the building showing the adjacent buildings so that we really had a sense of how big that building was and/or renderings from a little further away to get a sense of what that building was really going to look like. Did you listen to the comments from back then and remember that at all? 'Cause I'm not seeing any of it.
I do know that the applicant has some additional renderings in their package, the presentation tonight than what was included. And so, that we can look at those. They provided sections in the packet, but not addressing the adjacent buildings.
Okay. But of course, the building is now size bulk is approved by planning commission, so there's no changes available there. Now we're just decorating it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the density was approved.
The density.
Which, yes, I mean, the number of units and how they were arranged was approved.
Okay. There were some discussions of parking alternatives for the modern world, Lyft or Uber or some kind of shared parking. None of that was ever addressed?
At least not shown on the plans. We again can ask the applicant if they do have any future, some of that information is not always shown.
Okay.
Because it may not be a permanent feature. But in providing the loading area on Commercial Lane, presumably that also could serve as a pickup, drop-off, potentially, something like that.
You may not be able to answer this one because you weren't the original planner, but wasn't there like a giant blade sign on the side of the building that was in Commercial Lane to basically tell people that's where the entrance was? Because otherwise they wouldn't really know?
I can't confirm that. I do remember seeing something in a previous set, but not in any of the more recent sets that went to Planning Commission or before tonight. I'm not sure what happened if that was proposed.
And even a discussion of having a more safer way to get to that entrance, that you didn't have to walk down Commercial Lane to get to the door. That was, you weren't the original planner, so you don't
Yeah, and
know.
I'm trying to find, I know that they do, in this image here, on the east elevation, there is some kind of future signage for the retail shown. And signage will be something that they will have to come back separately for. That's not included tonight, and so that could, if there's questions or comments or even things to be included in a resolution, about future signage, that can definitely be something to consider tonight.
Okay, and do you remember anything from the original meeting about the tower design that make it more, stand out from the rest of the building and not be the same architecture as everything else?
You're talking about the corner, like where that
Corner-
restaurant?
Yeah, the tower corner piece that's a little taller.
I believe there was some comments on that. I'm not sure it was a kind of unanimous type feeling. The applicant has chosen to kind of keep it as is. I don't know if they internally considered options and why they chose that. We can ask them as well.
Okay, that's it for my questions.
My turn. Under the objective design standards, I don't know if it applies, but item number, well, it's A, Locust Street, Mount Diablo Boulevard. It says, at such time as the post office building redevelops, the existing sidewalk shall be widened along the garage driveway to 10 feet in width to further encourage through block pedestrian movement to the Duncan Arcade walkway. As I read it, I think that applies to the north elevation of this project. And I didn't see any 10-foot walkway that, on this portion, that would satisfy that request. Is that part of this project, or?
I'm trying to find a site plan to reference. No, and I will just say, the objective design standards are for projects that are going through kind of a discretionary design review path. They are not required to comply with them all if design review commission is okay kind of granting waivers from them or accepting deviations. So I'll throw that out there to begin with. And no, I don't believe that was something that's included. They do have their garage entrance off the north.
But that is a concept the city desires, right, to have a connection at that point?
Yep,
connected
that is
through
included. Yep, that would be something that would have been listed in as a kind of design component of the specific plan, which I think the checklist you're referring to pulled out anything from the specific plans that would apply to this project. So again, it kind of falls under that same caveat of not required, but only if the design review commission is, is approving of it.
Okay, and in that same area, the same vein of connections, I think in the staff report, our concerns was that corner, that it was too tight. Currently, it can't accept larger trucks. And I think in the staff report, you indicated that it was changed a little bit to allow, and I'm looking on C2 and C3, and I can't tell that it's been changed, from the existing asphalt that they're removing to the new curb layout seems identical. So I'm wondering how that was changed.
I think they just looked at the radius of that curve. And again, we can ask to clarify, but I believe kind of softening and widening the radius of that curve so it was not as sharp for trucks. Which page did you reference?
Well, I'm looking on the engineer's C2.00,
Okay.
and that shows the existing asphalt to be removed. And they show 20-foot drive widths and the radius. And then if you look over on sheet C3-00, they're indicating the new layout, and it appears to have the exact same layout.
I think the comment previously, and I'll have the applicant correct me if I'm wrong, but the previous proposal made that a tighter curve. So what you're commenting on, what that comment was referring to was a previous proposal, whereas they are now proposing it to be more consistent with what the existing condition is, which accommodates the trucks. But we can have the applicant confirm that as well.
But they can't make the turns now, right, under the existing conditions? Is what I'm understanding?
I don't know if that's an issue existing or if that was an issue as part of the current plan or the proposed plan. can maybe look into that. We have Ryan Cook here from engineering. I don't know if there's any comments maybe from engineering standpoint on that.
Okay.
We can confirm.
But let me ask my last question then. Could you go back to your third condition, I believe, or what you were suggesting? And it had to do with the loading?
Yep. There we go.
Okay, what does that mean? I mean, does that mean that the layout has to be redesigned for a pullout? I mean, to accomplish this, what does that condition really mean?
They just have to ensure that vehicles can continue to access commercial lane. So they cannot block the entire width of commercial lane for loading purposes.
Okay, so the only way they can't block it is to have a turnout then, right? Is that how I'm understanding this?
Well, how it's designed currently now, they could, if they pull off onto commercial lane, there still would be adequate room for a car to maneuver around. So there would still be a travel lane.
Okay. All right, any other questions from staff? That was it?
Yeah. And again, I'm sorry because I was not on the commission when in 2019. The wood doors, louvers on the exterior of the building, is there any requirements on the continued maintenance to keep the appearance? Because wood can change in weather, and then, you know, it looks beautiful in the rendering, but it could look not so beautiful years down the road. I don't know if we have any conditions set or could put. Is it a homeowners association that has to maintain it versus, you know, individual unit, and then it would be all blotchy probably? I don't know if that's something that was ever discussed.
Yeah, we can definitely talk to the applicant about like their own maintenance kind of requirements. You know, we do have, you know, some, you know, we run into this with other types of projects, you know, just maintenance over the years, and obviously there's an understanding that buildings require maintenance. But they, you know, if approved as shown, they'd be required to continue to have those panels be operating in the kind of bifolding manner. So they would be required to maintain the project at the level it was approved. So, you know, they couldn't come back and maybe, you know, make those fixed doors or something. They would have to continue to maintain that. And I imagine they probably do have some sort of HOA that would address those. But again, we can confirm with them.
Maybe we'll ask the applicant when they're up about what the material actually is on the exterior of these. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, finally, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if the applicant's here and like to make their presentation, if you could give your name for the record first, and then.
Good evening. My name is Steve Perry. I'm with Perry Architects. We are the architect of record for the project, which was designed by Woods Baggett. And tonight, we'd like to present the final material proposals we have, and also the landscaping. I know there's a lot of other questions, and we're happy to talk to you about those. To start, we'd like to really just mention the main design goals that Woods Baggett had, and those are basically creating a more of a blur between the public and the private, the indoor and the outdoor, and also creating more of a connection from the street, not only into the retail, but also into the upper levels. So beginning with Mount Diablo elevation, this pretty much represents most of the project here. The partie is, a strong base, clad in a wood, a stone panel, and with the slats above, and the step backs with planters, and a Corten metal planter that's expressed on the second floor. For the base, we are using a large format stone panel. This is produced by PetraArc, and the finish they have, they call it a riven finish, and it's an uneven textured finish. Yes, and it catches the light a little differently. It has a little more character and depth to it instead of just a flat panel. And then the openings around the retail space at the base, it's basically with angled panels that are ACM in a charcoal gray. Then for the second floor and above, we have the wood slats, which is the primary material. And it's a combination of solid slats and screen slats in front of windows and balconies, which creates a more interesting composition and a more delicate line in between indoor and outdoor. Just trying to reinforce that main idea. The slats themselves are a 2.5 by 1.5 inch deep section. At the solid walls, the slats are in line together and then staggered back and forth to create a vertical texture for the building. And then at the screens themselves, we drop one of the extrusions, creating the transparency for the screen. We're using, as you can see, we're using a Geolam product. And this is a product it has a recycled aluminum content, and it's faced with a wood finish. But the wood finish has a polymer coating on it that allows for durability. And it's actually made in Switzerland. I think it's fabricated here, but it's come from Switzerland. It is used to standing up to harsh winters and things like that, but we can get more information on that. And the one reason we are using this is that it's non-combustible, and with National Fire Code, there are some issues with having a true wood slat. And so also, this is a lighter material, and this is something that allows us for kind of less bulky hardware and fastening details. So with this at the top of the building, and mentioning the tower element here, this becomes a three-dimensional part of the building, a part of the building that's in the round. And so we will have this finish wrapping all the way around this element here. And then we do have a skylight at the top. So when you do look up, you'll start to get these shafts of light coming down through the top of the building. And that's another way to just engage the people on the street and create some interest and some destination for the building. And then looking at the west side, with our entrance, we wrap the corner with the screens. And then at the entrance itself, we have vertical Corten panels. And I'm sorry, that's not coming up. And that creates more of an intimate connection at the entrance itself. And then once again, we wrap the same panels onto commercial lane. So with that, I'll let Eric make his presentation for the landscape. We're happy to answer questions.
All right, good evening. So Haley touched on most of this. but just kind of the quick overview. Along the paseo edges, we're looking at interlocking paver flat work. I guess depending on the direction, that may or may not kind of match the city downtown standard with that kind of more rose-colored paver. Along that western edge there, we have, I can actually probably zoom in a little bit here. A series of linear planters with built-in seating. And the idea is, one, helping to separate from the existing parking with the intent that if nothing is to happen there, or maybe it's 10, 20 years down the road, is that you do have a permanent look, but also from this standpoint, if something does happen in a year or 2 or 5, that's something that's relatively easy to remove. And so whatever's going to go there in the future can go there. Moving to the Mount Diablo frontage. Again, metal planters with built-in seating there, so we're kind of activating all those spaces with street trees to match. And then up along the other side. I never used a computer. Again, pavers, and I believe up at the top we have bike racks for public and private use to load there. And then up on the upper deck level, I guess starting with the simple parts, these effectively are green roofs, kind of low-growing plant materials to intercept rainwater. And you can kind of see those in that yellowish-green color there. And then down at the main 5th floor deck area, a series of metal raised planters with various types of seating, either built-in or freestanding seating. I can see the number 2 here as a little fire pit zone with various trees, landscape built in. And then this 3rd floor area, relatively simple, kind of edge barrier planting with open space effectively. And that's pretty much it on the landscape. We can field questions as needed.
Okay, great. Is that your full presentation, or did you have anybody else? Okay, great. We'll bring it back for questions. Yeah.
You want to go first?
I'll be brief, I promise.
We've heard that before.
No, I really will. So I think you answered my question. The wood product. I've got the cross section here. It's a real wood laminate, but it's got, I think you said, a poly coating.
Resin. It's a poly resin. Excuse me.
Okay.
And it's impregnated into the wood, and it gives it durability, and it gives some resistance to moisture and to weather.
Yeah, and I was thinking about not so much the harsh winters here, with which you would get in Switzerland, which is a gorgeous place. It's really the Walnut Creek sun that
It's the
really
UV exposure.
beats. Yeah, and the heat just really beats on product. But it sounds like it's a high quality,
Yes.
not inexpensive product.
And everything changes in the sun. There's nothing out there that doesn't.
Yeah.
But it has a better UV resistance than a natural wood would have.
Well, to follow up on that, with the sun, if this fades, what happens? What control do we have that all of a sudden we're not going to have the splotchiness that Charles was asking about?
Well, it won't splotch, but all
Fade.
natural products, they're natural products, and so they do change. And that's kind of the beauty of a natural product also. And so, I mean, we can talk to the manufacturer, but it won't splotch. It may fade over time, but it'll fade evenly. And almost kind of in an uneven sort of way. If you think of Sea Ranch and things like that, it's not going to fade to that degree. But there may be some small fading.
Do we know that? I mean, how do you know that?
Just talking to the manufacturer and
Okay.
just knowing natural materials.
So there's nothing around that's been up for 5 years that could show us?
There is, but it's mainly in Europe. But
Is that
we
in our
could-
budget, Chip?
Well, we're happy to go. But I will look into it and see what projects are available to see in
All
the
right.
United States.
All right, sorry, Charles. I jumped in.
No, thank you.
It's funny, the original building, those screens were made out of a material that was recycled rice husks, which I was very concerned about how they were going to fade or change shape over time. So this seems like a more substantial product.
Well, the main reason we went from that was the fire code.
Oh, is that, okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that was an issue.
And then, and did they like lock shut for people, like when they close them up, are they like magnetized or something to keep them from blowing in the wind and moving around, or?
We're working on that now, but we understand that they need to be secure.
Okay. that was-
So we know they can't be flapping in the breeze.
The garage door, is it all the way on the outside of the building? Is it only
It's
used
not
for?
flush with the outside of the building, but it's recessed, I believe.
Is it
And
all the way
I'm
down
going
the
to
ramp?
introduce Bert
Yeah.
Ayers from my office also.
Is it all the way down the ramp? I mean, to
But
the
no, it's
bottom of
not.
it?
It's recessed, I think, a few feet, but it's at
Really?
the,
Okay.
it's at the top of
It
the.
wasn't on the drawings. And is it going to be like everybody's going to come in and have an opener to open it? Or is it going to be left open all day and only close at night?
I think that's something we'll work with ownership on, but typically it will close. We will have it closing. And it'll be a high-quality opener that opens quickly. But I think that would be a security issue if that's open all the time. And so,
And there's no concern with like if it's also the parking for the retail, that's parking for retail down below too, right?
yes.
How are people supposed to know to get in there and,
Hi, I'm Dave Balducci, I'm the ownership. Yeah, the door was only added, this is the condition from the planning commission, this is a 24/7 valet to
Right.
meet our parking requirement, but it's like, we gotta have a lock on the door. 3 AM, the door comes down, we don't, the public won't be coming to the roof. But yeah, absolutely, this is retail parking for our roof and for any downtown business, so the public can come in and we are meeting our retail parking requirement on site through the valet.
okay. So during the day, people can pull in and park. They don't have to
Absolutely.
Need any kind
Yeah,
of.
and we have a condition about, we've been at this a while. We did queuing studies, we did turning studies. We definitely meet the radius requirement because trucks have hit the wall of the building that's there. We pulled it in. We met every aspect of the specific plan and went through that in detail with the planning commission.
Okay, seemed confusing. Thank you very much. On A3000, there's a section on the north elevation behind the screens that almost looks like it's cantilevered out on the third floor. Is that just some kind of a, like, it's not showing the rest of the building? I don't understand what this is. It looks like it's cantilevered out over here. I don't know what, is that just there's something else happening that we're not seeing? And
No, it's just.
You need to get back on the microphone, I'm sorry.
It's part of the section that the top part is pulled back, and the building starts to cant at that, and so it goes a little.
Oh, so you're seeing that angle of
Just
it.
in the drawing,
Okay,
right.
all right. It was
Just for
kind of
clarity.
very confusing in the drawing, I gotta say. Okay, garage door windows. So there used to be on the side of the building in order to get people to go down Commercial Lane, there was kind of like a wing on the building, and I think it was public art, as a matter of fact, to get people to know to go down there. And we liked the idea of having something that draws them there, and now I think it's gone, right?
No, the feature's still there.
It is.
The idea that the art would be on that feature is, there's a process here in Walnut Creek for deciding what art is approved and where it can be located. So we still do have that feature, which could be signage.
Okay,
And we'll come back for that. But that wing,
It's
that
still there.
design feature is still there.
okay, good.
Yeah, and there was another comment too. We widened out Commercial Lane, so no one has to get to our door, you don't walk on the public street.
Yeah, I saw that in the landscape plan. There's a walkway going across, so that helped quite a bit. So, got that. I don't have any other questions right now.
Let me start with the, I guess, possible concern, the whole idea of these bifold screens or whatever, especially along Mount Diablo. My possible concern is, usually we look at a certain rhythm or, the architectural feature and we know what we're going to get.
Right.
And your proposal basically is, it's going to change every day.
Yes.
We're not going to know what that elevation's going to look like.
Yes.
And while it might sound unique, exciting, and new, I'm kind of wondering, you know, if it's a look that's a little bit unkempt, if you will. You know, it's not really a downtown feature that we can count on. And it seems to me visually very lightweight, and sometimes you'll see 2 or 3 open, some will be half open, some will be closed, and it could be a very disjointed visual effect.
Well, we do like the variety that it adds to the building. We think that gives it one more level of excitement and interest to the building, especially with this kind of filigree that we have on the outside, and that kind of skeletal element and the different shadow patterns that it creates. But with the doors, we are looking at certain ways where the doors can have to open all the way or shut all the way. And they set into a groove as they open all the way, or they set into a groove as they shut. And so they'll either be shut or open.
And as I understand it, there's some sort of a balcony in front of each one, is that correct? Or-
There are windows behind some of the operable panels, and there's balconies behind some of the operable.
And are the balconies accessible from inside out?
Yes.
And what kind of control or HOA, are we going to see a bicycle or a barbecue up there that could be out there, or swimming trunks hanging over the railing?
I'll let Dave handle that, but
Not in our building.
no, I would think not.
No. And this was designed thinking about the weather in Walnut Creek, right? You live in this unit, it is a double wall system we're putting in here at great expense. So you can have it sort of shaded with the slats closed. You can have it open, and so you see through your window. You could have the window open and get fresh air. And the same is true on the balconies. So you go down the balconies, you could have semi-privacy through the shading system. You could open the shading system and have open air. And we always have controls about what people can do. And we can't do barbecues on these balconies. I don't think the fire code allows it.
And will there be HOA restrictions on the type of blinds, or will someone be able to have purple blinds next to a red and a white blind?
There definitely will be design control review, yes,
And that-
absolutely.
Okay. The corner element, typically, you know, we use that or we request that that's some sort of a signature element, you know, that really stands out. And other than the added height, it's all the same material and everything, right? I mean, did you look at maybe having that, because that, as I understand it, is a kind of you can reserve that room for birthday parties or something, or it's a banquet room?
It's private dining. I mean, the whole
Private.
roof is designed to be a restaurant and bar, and then, you know, restaurants who can host a large private dining event drive additional revenue that way. So the idea is if you wanted to have a function there or something, you could rent
Right.
it out.
So did you look at maybe as a way to offset that from the rest of the building? You know, maybe there was more glass or something, taking advantage of the views or something, or a different joint, again, something rather than the same building, just going up an extra 15 feet, you know, what makes that stand out as some sort of a special corner element?
I guess it was our thought that just the structure itself stands out as a special corner element, and you know, we prefer the way it looks, the way it is, and you can open those windows too, so that people in that space could see out too. I think they're operable, right?
Yeah.
And then they're actually fully operable, the glasses
Yes,
too.
and as I mentioned, I mean, you know, there's glass all the way around that space, and there's a very large skylight, and so you will get light coming through that space versus below where it will where there are opaque walls. And so, I mean, that's kind of a subtle feature to it, but also, I think the composition of the building, really, I think it would start to get busy if you started to add one more element to this. And so we do like, there is a certain elegance to having that come up and complete itself with that material.
Okay. And how did you design, can you kind of walk me through the West elevation, I mean, not knowing the other half. Again, what elements, sure to say that if this doesn't go for the next 15 years, that the west elevation that maybe is meant to be hidden, but is open to the public for the next 15 years. I mean, did you,
Yeah,
how did you address that?
This was discussed, I think, with you guys and with the planning commission. Do we have a picture of it? Of Brendan? Yeah. I mean, we do have a property line wall there, which has to be prepared to be met with another property line wall.
But that's also cut, and so.
So you're looking here.
Right, so right now, it's a blank wall where it's anticipated in the second project that it would butt right up to that? Is that correct?
Correct.
So again, if that doesn't happen for 15 years, we're looking at a blank wall, a 3-story, 4-story blank wall?
Eric, can you move this to the right? I'm sorry. I just want to see this image here. So you can see here, we do have a blank wall above, but on this elevation, we have fenestration all the way down, and then we have a landscape element and the corten panels at the entrance itself. And this it starts to kind of make itself into a mini paseo in a way right now. And it's enclosed on one side with the wall, but on this side, it also will be enclosed by planting and some vertical planting here.
It's a 10-foot sidewalk going in, is what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. But again, going back to the blank wall, is there anything architectural to give it some interest in the event that nothing happens for a while? Did you look at any options rather than just saying, this will be covered up by phase 2?
Not at this point, but we can look into a composition for that. Maybe to express the floor plate and to maybe carry that rhythm over.
And is that where the core 10 happens below? Do I remember? Can you kind of, what exactly, is that just vertical core 10 panels on the bottom?
I think they're 36 inches wide, approximately, and they are 12 feet tall, so they're pretty impressive. I mean, they're
Okay, and
tall as seen here.
that vocabulary, what does that relate to? Where did that come from, or what is that intended to show, or?
We do have small trim elements with core 10 in the building, and then the planters, and then the planters up on the second floor, and some of the planters on the ground floor have the core 10 metal also.
Okay. Moving around now to the north side, what is your solution, that the city's concept is to have this connection to the Duncan Street, and that they do desire to have a 10-foot pedestrian access, and I don't believe you're showing that now. But if that was put in, what happens?
The Duncan Street Arcade ends north of our property. So you wouldn't go through, you would hit the Veggie Grill or whatever if on our side, right? We don't go all the way out that far.
But you can walk through, I believe, on as you do that dog leg, there's an arcade there, I believe, that goes all the way to Main Street. Am I correct on that? That's
Duncan Arcade is approximately 150 feet to the north.
Can you see this?
It
So this is the crosswalk that continues Duncan Arcade. Our property ends here. And
dies
there's
into the
buildings here. So
No, I know, but the idea was from this picture from left to right, as I read that connection, they wanted a connection from Locust Street going over through there to Main Street? Because that crosswalk goes to an arcade, I believe, isn't? And that goes all the way through to Main Street.
This is an arcade here, right? This is
Right.
Dunkin' Arcade. It ends at this crosswalk, and it goes through.
Right, so,
and this is
so
the
the
entrance to the city
condition, as I read it, is they were requesting on the other side, a 10-foot sidewalk continuing from the post office, which is on your side of the street on Locust, if you will, or more southern, a 10-foot connection going across, and somehow, I guess you cross the street or whatever, but the intent, I guess however it works out, is they wanted a 10-foot wide connection, and that was one of the goals. So that goal wants to be realized by the city. Are you allowing for any of that, or what would happen if we say, we want you to look at that goal?
This is the goal you're taking from the design review standards?
Yeah, if I could just step in a second, just to remind us that that goal is from the specific plan, and it's envisioning that the entire Opportunity Site 2 were to be developed. We are now looking at only half of that Phase 1. If you pull up kind of a larger map, and if you look at where Phase 2 would potentially occur, that project, that property fronts Locust Street, and the north side of that property is where a kind of connection could be seen on Locust. So now that we're looking at just half of this opportunity site, the completion of that specific standard would more likely be achieved through development of Phase 2 and not Phase 1.
So it'd only be half a goal then?
Well, if
I
you,
mean, it
if-
would stop from what you're just saying, then the owners would be on Phase 2, and it would stop there, but then how do we get that connection then going over to Main Street to complete the connection?
so where the existing connection is now, which you can see that crosswalk right there, that is north, that's not on 1532 Mount Diablo's property, so that is north. So the existing connection that exists is not on this property, but where that connection would then continue, that could potentially then be achieved out to Locust through the adjacent property. So if this property were to have been developed as a whole, as it was intended, it would have had to have been kind of included, but now that we're looking at it in two phases, it will have to be achieved through Phase 2, and it will have to connect somehow in some way to that existing crosswalk connection that you're seeing on that screen.
Okay, so that might be awkward because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle right now.
Potentially, but it would be up to, because that existing area is not part of this property, it would, it would and would always have fallen on that kind of half of this property that already connects to Locust Street. It always would have fallen on that portion of the property anyways. So now, it would be up to whatever happens on Phase 2 development to ensure that that connection is met.
Okay. Thank you. Last question, kind of on the site. Now we go to the east elevation. Is the stairway there, is that the main pedestrian entrance to the building? Or,
So there's a stair and an elevator there, and those are, think about 1500 next door and going up to Teleferic or the rooftop bar. You have that's sort of a ground floor lobby to get to the roof, and that elevator will take
okay.
retail customers straight up.
Most of the,
Yeah, that's not for residents. That's for
okay,
the
not,
public.
okay. You're talking about the one that's closer to Mount Diablo? I'm talking about there's two sets of stairways that's further in. You-
Back by the core.
See where on this slide, it says commercial lane? Where the C is on commercial, just go right to the right. Move your, up.
Up?
No, right down, right there, right in there. Is that a pedestrian entry or?
No, that's exiting from the garage, alternative exiting from the garage.
Okay, so the public's not going in and out there or anything?
We would think the public would either take the shuttle to the commercial lane or go up to our roof.
Okay, where I'm going with all this, I kind of wondered why you stopped the paving where you did, right in the middle of that, and I was questioning whether that was some sort of a entry point or whatever to where the paving pattern, needed to be adjusted to account for that.
Hi, I'm Bert. The northern stair is PG&E's stair. They required a direct stair to the electrical room.
Okay, so
And
more of a
we-
maintenance.
Yeah, I'd love to get rid of it, but they wanted it.
Okay, all right, great. And now I just have a couple questions for Eric, I believe, landscape. Starting with your rooftop garden. Which I like, but can you kind of explain the trees that you're using and the concept? What I read somewhere is that you really want to take advantage of the views toward Mount Diablo. And so I'm looking at your plan, and I see 5 trees there that might be blocking the view of Mount Diablo. So I just kind of question, how you arrived at this planting palette with the idea that this whole rooftop was going to be looking at Mount Diablo.
I mean, in general, the canopy would be slightly raised, so it's not necessarily a screen as a user of the space. These planters may be up, say, 2-3 feet, and then the canopy of that tree might not start till over the, an average person's height.
Yep.
In which case, the view would still be preserved there.
What are those trees, or do you have?
I'm not sure we're at that level of detail, but let's double check. It's like Japanese maples and smoke trees. Smoke trees, kind of the little green on the right.
Okay, so they're not really, they're big shrubs then, kind of. Okay. Let me jump now down to the planters along the west Paseo, the temporary planters. What goes in there, and what I'm fishing for, again, if it's not so temporary, maybe for shade, that's going to get the afternoon sun and everything. Some small patio trees might be appropriate, shade some of those benches and give a little bit more of a partition there, if it's there for 10 years.
Look at that right now, I think it's just proposed for shrubs.
But there'd probably be room if you wanted to put some small patio
trees.
trees on
would
either side.
Probably be okay, yeah.
That, okay. And then my last question, I'm getting a little bit technical here, but again, this whole idea on the rooftop gardens, you're putting in these pre-planted trays of sedum that are going up in there. How does that work? First of all, how is that being maintained? That if, one dies or whatever in the middle, I mean, how does that work?
As far as the maintenance, I couldn't speak too much to that. I think in general, it's semi-walkable, so if there was something that needed to be replaced, someone could walk on that. I'm not familiar with this particular system, but I would imagine it's not necessarily plug and play, but you could pull systems out or trays and then put them back in.
Okay. My biggest concern is your irrigation system. I don't understand, this is all pre-planted and you're putting it in, so I don't know how you're going to, when it arrives with the tray planted and everything, how are you going to irrigate it? Your irrigation plan shows that you're going to do a subsurface drip in all this area. But if it arrives...
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the irrigation for this particular system, but in
Okay.
general, they make them fairly easy to accommodate.
Well, but you're going to have to rip up this pre-planted to get the irrigation in, at least what you're proposing.
Not necessarily, it would depend on the phasing of the construction.
Well, no, the product that you're, and again, I apologize, I'm getting weed. I guess instead of airing it now, I think you need to relook at the whole irrigation system for a couple of reasons. Number one, the way you've spec'd it out, at the most, you might have 4 emitters watering a tray. And I think you're not going to water it efficiently the way you've designed it.
Yeah, we can look at that.
And then the way you've designed it again, you're installing something pre-manufactured that's already there. You would then have to take it apart to put in your irrigation system, which I don't think is going to work. So just say, take a look at it and come back with it.
Most of these things are built to accept different types of irrigation, but we could look at that.
But that's not what you're spec'd out, is my point, so check that out. Thank you. That was it on the irrigation questions. I think I'm jumping around here, but I think that's all the questions I have right now, so, sure, Charles?
And this is actually a follow-up to one of Brian's questions, and I think it's more of a Haley question. If they were developing both buildings together, and this is about that Duncan connection, would we be requiring them to do anything different right now if both buildings were going up?
You mean, is there any modifications that we would require for this specific site?
Yes.
No, because if you look at where the that existing connection is, it's so far north of this site that it actually it doesn't make it sense, and there's nothing that this site could do to connect to that without the other site.
Okay, great, thanks.
I have a quick question for the applicant. There was a really great rendering in the original set of nighttime rendering. You don't happen to have that in this package, do you?
It's not in this package.
It's not in this package. Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to open up to the public. There's a couple people that have been here maybe just for education, but if anybody has any comments or questions, come on up to the podium. And if anybody in Zoom has any questions?
There is nobody in attendance.
Nobody in attendance, okay. Okay, seeing no interest from the public, I will close the public hearing. And first of all, to the applicant, from our questions or whatever, before we bring it back for our comments, did you have any questions or not understanding some of our comments that you need clarification on?
No, I believe we.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll bring it back for our comments and see where we go.
Okay, I'll start on this one. I always liked the project when it first came in. I thought it was very cleverly done. It's very urbane, very different for Walnut Creek. I think it's going to, again, it's going to be the tallest building in that part of downtown at 5 stories tall. And, you know, I think at some point Design Review is going to catch hell for this building because a lot of people want little hats on their buildings and gridded windows, and they're not going to get that. And so if it goes forward, which I expect it to, it's going to, it's going to be a different direction, and I like it. I think I'm very positive for it. I always like the idea of the louvers in the screens, in that it will animate the building and make it breathe. I've seen buildings in Switzerland that actually do that, and in Germany, and I think they're fantastic, and I think it's a good solution. And I think the architecture is well worked out. You know, the streetscape, some things we talked about in the original meeting, and I didn't go back and, re-look at it. But some of the concerns on streetscape, I think, have been fixed as far as, using the frontage to get separation from the street with the benches, and the landscaping, I think, is fine. I really like the unit plans. I think particularly the kitchen extensions, where the kitchen kind of goes out almost as an extension onto the patio, is a really nice solution, and I think that's going to really be very successful. I think eventually you'll have to look at some parking alternatives. I realize that you do have some electric car spaces in there. How you do valet with electric cars is going to be interesting. I realize they're all on the upper level, so maybe that's something that people will have to work out. I'm hoping there's ability to extend that in the future if necessary. I think we talked at parking alternatives last time about, Lyft and Uber, because a lot of people there won't have a car. And so I think having those kind of things figured out ahead of time, but I guess they're just going to say, meet me on Commercial Lane. Originally, I was hoping there was a way to get a space in there for that. But even if it's shared cars or something, I think that could be accommodated in the parking lot. We talked about the corner tower on the original application, and it wasn't really to make it a tower so much as to just look at if it's different enough. And I think it's fine. I mean, I think you've worked this through, and I think the solution is going to work. I'm really disappointed, though, that we didn't have the renderings in our package, because I think these drawings were exceedingly hard to look at. I mean, I know somebody that pulled it up online and printed it out and looked at it and said, "Oh my God, it looks like a prison." And Charles had never seen it before, and so it would have been nice to have more of that information. I'm glad you brought it to this meeting, but it would have been nice if it was part of, the package, because people online look at it, we look at it, and it was not thorough at all. And again, in the last one, I asked for sections through the building to show its context with the other buildings around it. We didn't get it. I still think it's, again, it's a towering building, and I would have liked to have seen that. And again, Planning Commission approved the parking. I think, I've walked that Duncan, arcade a million times because my office was across the street. And I do think in phase 2, that can be worked out. Right now, there's like a 5-foot sidewalk on each side. I think you're gonna wind up with a wider sidewalk on the north side and be able to make that work. But I think the cars in that corner with pedestrians, with Duncan Lane, with commercial lane, there's gonna be zigzagging and issues all over the place. And I think that, for me, that was a concern from the beginning. Planning Commission let it go, so I'm not gonna be concerned about it at this point until I get run over there. And so, again, I'm ready to move it forward. I think you're gonna continue to do a good job on it. I think the projects continue to develop well. And from the answers I've heard today, I know that the applicant's gonna continue to get the quality there, so I'm ready to move it forward.
Great, thank you. Walnut Creek's doing its best to become, I call it San Francisco East. It's growing up as a city. So at some level, I guess we're just going to get more of, I agree with Commissioner Gorney about the traffic and just all the pedestrians and the extra cars. I think what we've seen from all the apartment buildings that have gone up in the city is there's a lot more traffic and a lot more people. But that goes with a city that's growing up. To your point, Commissioner Gorney, on the renderings, because there were no renderings in here, I did ask Haley, and she pointed me to the prior renderings, and that was very helpful because it really popped in the renderings of what it was going to look like versus I couldn't really tell from the drawings. And for the applicant's benefit, because I was not involved with the commission in 2019, I fill a resident at large seat. I'm not an architect. I'm a Walnut Creek resident, and so I look at these projects through the eyes of how am I going to feel about looking at it when I'm downtown shopping, having dinner, would I want to live in that building? And my answer on your project is, yeah, this looks like this would be a really neat place to live. And I'm very familiar with the property that you're putting it on, and that to me has been somewhat of an eyesore property for a long, long time. So I welcome the building. I think the architecture is unique. I agree with my fellow commissioners that it's a bit of a gamble with the louvers and everything, but I think it's a gamble worth taking. It's something unique and different. And I also think about it from if I lived in there, those louvers would be kind of really neat, cool to modulate, feel private, open them up. I kind of like that quite a bit. I'm thrilled about the public space on the roof. I ventured into a building in the city one day walking around a number of years ago that had a public roof, and that's very rare. We don't have much of that in Walnut Creek. I'd like to see more of that. I think some of the newer developments going on are having that. I'm also very happy that these are condominiums. I think we have an out of balance between rentals in the downtown and owned properties. I think a lot of people want to own a place to live in our downtown. So I'm very much in favor of this project. I think you guys did a really good job on it.
On this particular project, I'm relying on the architects here because I agree with Joseph. These drawings are terrible to look at and review. And I don't really have I'm going with what I remember, and I'm happy with the answers that I heard tonight that you're giving me. But these drawings were a disaster trying to figure out what we're really going to see. And I really am not 100% comfortable in my mind based on the drawings of what we're going to see. So, like I said, in this particular case, I am putting some faith in Joseph's comments and Charles in your answers. Is it possible? I would like to have something if I get an agreement that maybe there's a condition of some sort of a review every 5 years to guarantee that all these shutters aren't faded or whatever, that there's a consistent look. and whether they've got to be oiled or redone or whatever to maintain what we've been promised, and it doesn't change. I would like to see that in there. I would also like to see some sort of a element, whether it's landscape, architectural, paint, or whatever, on the west elevation, the blank wall, just giving a nod to Phase 2 that may or may not ever develop. And I think adding some small patio trees and the planters along the half paseo would be appropriate also. And I think the landscape has to redo the concept, not the concept, but maybe the minimal, the irrigation of how they're going to water and maintain all that rooftop pre-planted tray system. And with that, I guess I'm ready for a motion.
Do you think trees will fit in that planter area across there? Do you think that would?
Yeah, I think some small, again, we're not talking sycamores or anything, but a small patio tree would be fine. Again, their crown's gonna go out maybe, 6, 8 feet, so.
Yeah, I forgot about the blank wall. What are you thinking on the blank wall?
Well-
Super graphic or?
Well, just not a blank
Colors
wall.
or something? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And you're confident with the staff working with the applicant to come up with some?
Yeah, I don't want to bring it back or delay it. I just think that's
It could
something
be
to be
painting of
addressed.
some sort where there's some lines or something that
Right,
that
right,
make
yes,
the building,
yes.
ground the building on that side. Okay.
I'm happy with that.
And how can we do a maintenance requirement in a staff, in a resolution?
Well, I would suggest not doing a staff-implemented condition for that, for a long-term, regularly scheduled maintenance check. But you could do a condition that would require it to be included with, say, I don't want to say the CCRs, but, the house rules.
How do we write that
And
up?
if-
I'd be
if-
okay saying it in the CCNRs, to be honest.
Would the applicant be,
Can we highly encourage the applicant to do that? Okay. All right. And you said also irrigation should be addressed?
Well,
in
this is
the-
again more technical. The way that, if we're approving this on their plans, they actually have an irrigation system and it won't work for these pre-planted trays, so that has to be redesigned.
Okay. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve this project, application Y18-063, with a encouragement, well, to extend encouragement to the owner that they have a maintenance, some kind of a maintenance provision in their building to be able to upgrade and review the screens as necessary, to make sure that they are, in good shape in perpetuity. That the west blank wall is somehow addressed through color or some other architecture to ground it and make it more acceptable visually, since it may be there for a long period of time. That if possible, they add taller landscape at the passé, as I like to call it now, since it's only half a paseo, in order to screen and get some taller landscape in there, trees if they fit, or taller landscape. I'm with you, Brian, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that the irrigation system is reviewed carefully by the city for specifics on the trays and the rooftops and how everything is integrated.
I just have a comment. We didn't discuss it, but I'm just kind of curious, given that there's a restaurant and knowing how signage has been going lately, again, if they come back and they want a restaurant sign up on that 5th floor with these louvers and stuff, now that we're looking at the architecture, I don't really see any space where a sign could logically go. Do you, or how?
No, and I don't
I'd
think.
like to get ahead of this rather than when Charles and I, maybe a
Yeah.
year from now.
It would take a sign exception to do anything over 25 feet, which I don't think they're going to get. And so I think that the signage package will come back and that'll be addressed. So I don't think we need to mention it.
I guess what I'm fishing for is, can we somehow, through the notes or something, indicate, from this architecture, is this appropriate that we don't anticipate.
building?
Top of the building, that, you know, there's banding here and that, you know.
Okay,
and-
we
or
can,
something like that.
we can, you know, specifically say that no signage would be above 25 feet.
For this architect,
Yeah, I
can
think
we
it's
do
a-
that, Chip? Is that,
I mean, it's in the sign ordinance.
Well, if they come in for a, it would put this resolution at risk of returning to you. If say they wanted to come in and do a sign that went over 25 feet, and let's say they found a good solution for it.
Yeah, they would have to come back to us anyway.
Do
They'd
we have
to
a,
come back to you
I don't-
anyway.
I don't think we need to put it in there.
do we have a distinction today between commercial versus residential? Call it skyline signs and high rises, because I'd probably be pretty much against any kind of skyline sign on a residential building.
We don't. But staff would recommend that we don't address signs in here, because signs are not a part of this package.
Okay, and the last one I want to add is.
Rely on the sign
Yeah,
ordinance.
you
Okay.
know, there was talk originally about having that kind of blade on the side of the building be the art. And I want to encourage the applicant to put the art on the project. I think that this project, more than anyone in town, could really use it. Because it is kind of repetitive and it needs some flash, some color, something. And I thought the idea of having it along that blade on Commercial Lane was brilliant. And I would encourage them to do it on site and to use that location.
and lastly, would the maker consider, I would like to put in more direct language on the maintenance. I mean, specifically, what we're looking for, is there any fading, so we want it to be consistent? or at
But
least-
Brian, we can do with that on any project in town. They paint a building, it fades. I mean, I don't know how you're going
But
to
this
be
is
able to
so
do
much
that.
of the architecture of the entire building, these wood products.
Mhm.
And what I want to be is
So a requirement,
consistent.
a requirement in 5 years to change them if they get 20% fading? I mean,
Well,
I don't know how to write that up.
yes, I want some sort of control, or are we going to be happy of, it's not going to be splotchy, he said, but if it's faded, and some are and some aren't, is,
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because I've seen it
yeah.
on buildings before. I just don't know how to make it in a resolution. Chip?
I was just going to make the same statement I made for the last item, is to make a motion, make the changes to the motion, and vote on it, and you don't always have to approve it.
Mhm.
I mean, you can make multiple motions.
I mean, I agree that having maintenance as part of this is important. I've seen buildings that fade badly and the colors and things, and they look horrible. And so, yes, and there is so much of it on this building, it is critical. I'm assuming that the type of material, as I see it, being polymer on aluminum, is going to be fine. It's not going to be an issue with it. But
I worry because it's natural wood with polymer embedded in it. That's as the applicant stated.
all right, let's.
I'd like to see a little more, I'd like to see more specificity in our motion too about this, because we're sort of, I agree with you what you said about paint and other finishes, but this is sort of a big unknown of a type of material to have that much overall visual impact on the building. And as you said, this is the biggest building in the area, so if we,
There's a lot of,
this is our
there is a
opportunity.
lot of it on this.
Yeah, this is our opportunity to basically put a line in the sand to say, hey, we're going to do this. We want to make sure it's going to continue to look good.
Wait, the motion could require regular or annual maintenance to the wood product.
Okay, I'll add to that first statement that there's an annual maintenance review by the owner to ensure minimal fading and discoloring of the wood material on the screens. I'm sure that there's going to be a HOA that'll deal with that too. Don't know if that's worded correctly, but there it is.
Sounds all right.
I'll second the motion.
Okay,
Anything else, Brian, you want to add?
I think I beat that to
sorry.
death enough.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, good.
All right, can we have a roll call?
Yes, we can. Commissioner Gorney,
Yes.
Commissioner Krelling,
Yes.
Commissioner Killian.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, that was project 4C, okay. Now we go to item number 5, commission considerations. Are there any commission considerations? Thank you.
Great project.
Let's see.
Chip, is this your last meeting?
Yes.
that's what I was gonna bring up. Thank you.
This is my time, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
This is your time. Then we get our time.
Yeah.
Challenge you.
Thank you, Temporary Chair Killian. We, for the 12-1 meeting, we have no items. There was an item, but we moved it to the 12-15 calendar, where there may be 2 projects, but there will definitely be one on that meeting. So the 12-1 December 1st meeting is canceled. Okay, and yes, this is my last meeting with this Design Review Commission, and I've appreciated my short time as a chair and my long term as staff. You guys do great work. There's buildings in town that are noticeably better from your work, and then other buildings in town where they are just better, even if things you might not notice on your first look or your second look. But many people do, and I appreciate that. I applaud your work, and thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have any idea who the replacement will be?
At this time, it'll probably be on a temporary basis. The Community Development Director, Mark Wardlaw, who is in the room tonight, will likely take over the reins of this commission, and for a time to be determined.
Good.
Great.
Look forward to that.
And I think Commissioner Gorney brought it up maybe last time, so I'm going to bring it up this time, the parking. This time, there was almost no spots left, and I did a little survey myself. I'm the only one in the commissioner's spot with a parking permit, and what I think happened this time is on the 3rd floor conference room from 6 to 8 was the Homeless Task Force Community Forum, and they had a bunch of people up there. So I know typically we try and block off with the cones, which Chip did, but people already slipped in before he could get out there.
I was
So,
late to the party.
yeah, just whoever takes over as commission secretary, any help in that area would be awesome.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
We're going to miss you. It was short and sweet, but we'll still miss you.
I think he just saw the great parties that Ken had. He says, I want them.
Yeah, right. Can we do that again? No, big
Foot
kidding.
long.
It took 34 years to earn something like that. That was well appreciated.
All right. Okay, moving on to item number 6, commission member and staff reports or announcements.
Nothing from me.
Nothing I can think of.
Nothing over there? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are adjourned at
Thank you.
9:18.
Good job, Brian, you did it.
Oh.